Well, that was an amazing session. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of FAO and all the collaborators in this technical session, I welcome you to this special event on sustainable financing for achieving forest and landscape restoration in celebration of the International Day of Forests. We apologize for the delay in beginning this session. That was from the previous program. We will be continuing this session promptly just until 2:00 p.m. this afternoon when the interpreters go home. My name is Sarah Shear. I'm the president and CEO of Eco Agriculture Partners, an NGO that promotes sustainable landscapes worldwide. We have enjoyed a long and rich collaboration with FAO, including in its programs on forest and landscape restoration and on landscape finance, and collaborated in this work presented today. As you are all certainly aware, despite the strong technical knowledge base and powerful rationale for restoration, the pace and scale of action have been inadequate. Lack of financing for the many diverse investments needed across degraded landscapes to restore productivity and ecosystem-wide health has been a key barrier. During this session, we announced the release of an exciting new publication called Local Financing Mechanisms for Forest and Landscape Restoration that reviews a wide range of local level investment mechanisms that have been successfully used in practice. The publication is available in English and French in the link that's being shared in the chat. Several specific examples will be highlighted today. You can see in the agenda that we have a panel of 4 distinguished speakers. And in addition to their contributions, we encourage participants to make comments and ask questions in the chat. FAO has established a community of practice in forest landscape restoration, and following this event, questions raised in the chat will be addressed in the community. You're also welcome to sign up for that, and you can find the link in the chat. We'll be soliciting your inputs also briefly through an electronic poll after the speaker presentation and follow-up questions from me. So let's get started. First, let me welcome the distinguished Christophe Bessassier, a forestry officer of FAO and my longtime collaborator, who will introduce the forest and landscape restoration mechanism of FAO. You can find the full bio for Christophe in the chat. Christophe, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Before giving the floor to my colleague Mathilde Evans for the presentation of our new publication, I will just give you a few information on the scope of the challenge, the main available funding sources relevant for FLR, and key work packages developed by our FLRM mechanism to support country partners' resource mobilization efforts. Next, please. Yeah. Globally, no. Previous one, please. Yeah. Globally, up to 2 billion hectares are degraded, and several global targets have been set up, as said already. Bonn Challenge, New York Declaration on Forest, degradation neutralities. To achieve these global targets, it will require up to $49 billion a year for the Bonn Challenge and the New York Declaration, and more than $300 billion a year for achieving the degradation neutrality targets. Next, please. Multiple funding sources are available to achieve these global targets. State budgets, domestic resources, climate finance, such as Green Climate Fund or Adaptation Fund, environmental funds, such as the Global Environmental Facility, multilateral, bilateral donors, non-governmental funding, private sector, and non-traditional funding, such as the crowdfunding platform. All those potential investors, no, sorry, please keep this first slide. All those potential investors have not the same appetite for risk, as you can see on the scheme, depending on the level of degradation and the cost of restoration in a particular landscape. What is key to ensure long sustainable financing for forest landscape restoration is to mobilize simultaneously these multiple funding sources. Next, please. To support our country partners' resource mobilization effort, our FLRM team developed several work packages. We are supporting, we are providing technical assistance to support country partners to access multiple financing instruments. such as Green Climate Fund, Global Environmental Facility, Adaptation Fund. We are also proposing capacity building products on sustainable financing for forest landscape restoration, e-learning courses, community of practice with series of webinars, regional training on preparation of bankable projects, etc. We are supporting country partners to develop financial plans to facilitate the implementation of their national program. It means that we are providing support on value chains development to increase sustainability of FLR investment, on market-based mechanisms such as payment for ecosystem services to provide incentives. And sometimes also, as in Lebanon, we are supporting the operationalizations of the national forest funds. And finally, we are regularly publishing working papers, guidelines on sustainable FLR finance, such as the one to be presented to you now and entitled Local Financing Mechanism for Forest and Landscape Restoration, a review of local level investment mechanism. Thank you for your attention, and over to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Christophe, for that excellent introduction. Let me now invite Mathilde Evans, expert in financing on forest landscape restoration of FAO, to provide us with an overview of the main findings of this great publication on local financing mechanisms. You can find Mathilde's bio, more details in the chat. Go ahead, Mathilde.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So I will present to you what's in the publication that is out today about local financing mechanism. What we wanted to look at is how can we actually bring the money down to the ground for forest and landscape restoration. Next. So in a landscape, you have a mosaic of different land uses. Next. In the landscape, you have a mosaic of different land uses, and each land use is linked to a type of financing needs. You will not finance the same way a land that is used for agriculture, one that is used for livestock, one that is used for forest. So you need to have actually different type of financing for each type of land. And one type of land has evolved during its life. For example, if you want to restore land, next, you will have to think about all the different type of activity that you will have to do during the entire restoration process. So from protection, for example, you will have to do some zoning, you might have to do some training as well. Then during the restoration process, it will be about maybe bringing some seeds, bringing some material for the restoration. You also might want to bring some improved seeds, improved breeds to improve the way agriculture is done. You might also want to have less people in the area that you are looking to restore. So maybe trying to develop some activities, socioeconomic alternative activities so that the people are out of these areas. And for that, you will have to do some business development, trainings, etc. Next. So you do have a lot of activities in the restoration process, and they have different financing needs. For the purpose of this publication, we tried to classify the different type of investment needs for restoration. And we basically found out that you have two different main type of investment needed. The one that are called the enabling investment. These investments are really important to lay the institutional and policy foundation for your work. It's about creating coordination between stakeholders, appropriate legal and policy framework, etc. So all what's needed for restoration to be successful. So that's one very important part. And the other part that is really important are the direct investments. Actually, how are you gonna do restoration? And for this, you will need to do restoration, improve agricultural practices, etc. And for this, you will need some investment as well, which are called the asset investment. So how are we gonna finance all these investment that are needed? Next. For this, you have different type of financing mechanism. For the purpose of the study as well, we separated them into, we had to classify the financing mechanism. And so we classify them in two types. You have the financial mechanisms, and this one provide funds for FLR activities at different stages of the FLR process. It's to cover the transaction cost. cost. And you know them very well. You have the one that are for profits, such as the loans, for example, the equity investment, or the non-for-profit ones, which are the grants or the public finance instrument. So that's one way, one type of financing mechanism. The other type are the market mechanism. They are mechanisms that are actually using market incentive for investment. And these, for example, you have payment for ecosystem services, ecotourism, etc. So there is a market mechanism involved in the financing. So in the publication, we looked at every and each of these mechanisms. We studied them and we gave a case study applied to forest and landscape restoration. I will show you only one to explain how we study them, and then I will invite you to look at the other in the publication. Next. The one I chose to present today is the one that is linked to insurance and guarantee. I chose this one because it's a bit less common, and I think it's very interesting to use for restoration. It's very interesting because, as Christophe said, forest and landscape restoration investment are seen as very risky investment. So a lot of investors don't dare actually investing, but you can put mechanism to reassure them. And this insurance and guarantee mechanism do exactly that because they de-risk restoration investment. What does that mean? It means that they are providing a security against political instability, market risk, or risk of non-payment. The beneficiary can be the FLR operators or the investor. So that's how we describe the mechanism. Then we have a case study for each of these mechanisms explaining how it works more precisely. For example, EcoPlanet Bamboo is a company that is restoring degraded lands, turning them into commercial bamboo plantation using the landscape approach. So that's what EcoPlanet Bamboo does. The thing is, they're doing it in country where you have a high political risk, such as Nicaragua or South Africa. So MIGA, the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, is providing a $50 million US guarantee against this investment. It means that if EcoPlanet Bamboo is not successful, the investor will not lose all their money. A big part of their money will be returned to them thanks to this guarantee. Next. So once you look at the mechanism and how it can be good for FLR, we try to understand what are the success factors. So one of the success factors is that really you need to use this guarantee where you do have market failure and there is a need for this guarantee. The challenges for this one are, for example, the cost of the insurance, because when you take an insurance, you have to pay for it. And if it's a $50 million US insurance, you have to pay a significant amount of money to be covered. And the second important challenge for this is how to calculate the level of risk. It's different. It's very difficult to know how much this insurance should be, as we don't have a lot of other examples to be able to calibrate the cost of the insurance. The investor can be, we also have a section of what investor can be. So in this particular mechanism, they can be hedge fund or multilateral financial institution. And we also explain how investor can play a really key role. And in this run, they provide guarantee or they provide the insurance. Next one. So this is to present how, it's much more detail in the presentation, but a little bit the reasoning that we had into looking at all of this mechanism. And I really invite you to look at the presentation for that. But what's important is, next one, is that each of these financing mechanism is not really useful when it's used in isolation. Next. It has to be used in a coordinated way. And why? It's to meet the different stakeholder need. Previous one. To leverage adequate finance over time and across the landscape, and to spread the burden of investment risk. I'm sorry, there is a delay of when I see the slide. So can you put the next one? Yeah, thank you. And the next one. So basically you need to coordinate
2 minutes,
finance.
Matilda, okay?
I need to wrap up?
2 minutes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. So the coordination of finance can be, you can coordinate finance. So either you can use it at the same time, doing simultaneous financing or sequential financing. using the different type of mechanism together or one after the other. And the two type really help. And I hope to give you a little bit more example about that in the question letter, or you have example in the publication. Next. Another really important part of what we saw is that if you really want your financing mechanism to work well, they need to be part of a landscape financing strategy, a long-term landscape financing strategy. And this can only be done if you build strong partnership within the stakeholder group and also between the stakeholder groups. So you need to have a vision and really look at all these mechanisms and how they fit in a long-term plan. Next. So the other two key lessons for success is that you need to think about your landscape plan as a business model. It cannot be just a plan and hoping to get grant funding. You really need to think about how you can make that sustainable in the long term and really looking at value chain, sustainable market to actually support your landscape. And the last point, which for me is really the key one, because that's when you see landscape that work well, it's because you do have a strong local ownership and champions. And building local capacity is key to be able to support emerging champions. So I hope with that you will be able to look at the publication next, at the publication that will explain you all this mechanism and really give you some idea about what's possible to finance FLR. And we'll also have an e-learning course that you can consult that will detail the presentation, the publication as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Matilda, for that really excellent overview of opportunities. And I think it will inspire everyone here to go to this publication and see the very many examples that are provided there, very concrete ones of where these diverse financing mechanisms have been applied. Let me next invite Katiela Musa, Regional Technical Advisor for the United Nations Capital Development Fund, to showcase another example that is included in this publication. His full bio can be found in the chat. Go ahead, Katiela.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I just want to echo what Mathilde said about the financial, the local financing mechanism and how to bring money down to the ground for the FLR. As you may know, UNCDF has a track record for the last 40 years in really applying local development fund to the natural resource management, food security, and climate change adaptation activities. And this is, a great opportunity between UNCDF and FAO to show how to really have this local financing mechanism work in the decentralized context. Next. So to be really in phase with what Mathilde say, local development fund is one of the financing mechanisms together with the blended finance, which can really enhance the forest and landscape restoration mechanisms to contribute to the local economy. And this has some merits to really spell out. In terms of merits, you need to have the decentralization context to apply this local development fund, either through a local transfer, intergovernmental transfer, to incentivize the resource, mobilization of local finance, including the internal resource mobilization, and to really focus on the basic social services, local economy, natural resource management, food security, and women economic empowerment. So this tool is very well, really shown as a most concrete and adequate tool to really fit into the decentralization context in mostly the least developing countries. And we have this track record for that. Next. So it is a very complex and easy and user-friendly tool, because it is a multi-stakeholder, multi-partnership tool, but it is easy to use because it is grant-based very often. So there are many stakeholders around which are involved in this LDF, but it is quite documented that these stakeholders can work very closely to make it happen. Next. So you need to have, in terms of operational approach, you need to have a local strategic planning which can encompass local development plan. You need to have an annual investment plan and budget. And this might fit into maybe a performance-based grant system where you need to have a minimum condition and performance measure to top up the budget, or you need to use the LDF as a support budget with an investment and capacity building activities are a near marked. And this, in this case, it is a near marked situation where we use this local development fund to finance the FLR activities. Next. So this is a scheme that shows, concretely how it goes. In the particular context of our partnership with FAO, we went through the transfer to the regular national system, an amount of 160K, just to channel them to the local government account to implement this FLR activities with a support, technical assistance, and reporting support from many stakeholders, including national stakeholders, UN agencies, and also local communities and local stakeholders. Next. So we went through a couple of stepwise to really make it happen. We set up an operationalize what we call the FLRS landscape and FLR and income generating activity windows. So they went through the agreement between involved stakeholders, recruitment of technical assistance, setting up the earmarked funding windows, notifying the local budget and top it up, and agree on the turning plans with stakeholders. Next. So the second aspect.
Just 1 minute. You have about 1 minute. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Sarah. So we also support the procurement process to the local government and the local stakeholders. Next. And as the last stage, we set up, an audit. We agree on the indicator to monitor to track the support and the FLR activities, and also put in place an audit system at the national level with the national funding agencies. So in terms of lesson learned, because it's very difficult to have this in 5 minutes to summarize all this support. Next slide, please. In terms of lesson learned, we learned that we need to clarify the role of engaged stakeholders, because this is a multi-partnership design that is really complicated because of the difference of tradition of business model between the actors involved. And we need also to design an integrated and synergetic action plan to support the beneficiaries. And also we need to apply harmonized procedures of engaged stakeholders, because we need to be sure that monies that are mobilized at the global level can be easily channeled to the local level without any impediments in terms of budget support. So in a nutshell, this is what I want to share in terms of excellent experience of our joint venture with FAO in the FLRM mechanism in FAO. So over to you, back to you, Sarah. It is a very short presentation, but I can answer more questions about it. Thank you very much.
But very succinct and extremely interesting case example that others around the world can learn from. Let's hear now from Chadi Mohana, Director of the Ministry of Agriculture of Lebanon, about the example of a national program in that country that has been successfully supporting investment and restoration. You can find Chadi's full bio in the chat. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for the organizers and for the 300 participants that are still with us after this long day. Well, as Sarah said, we're going to be talking a little bit about the situation in Lebanon, and I would like to go to the next slide, please. Yes, maybe you know it already. Lebanon is facing at the present time a very critical situation. Beside the COVID pandemic, which is worldwide, we're having a big, severe economic crisis where the banking system that used to be the shining star of Lebanon is collapsing. The local currency has decreased by almost 90% of its value. And since we are an importer country, so import is getting very difficult and people are living in real poverty. Next slide, please. So people now, as I said, we import 80% of our food. So with this current situation, we are moving more and more to try to have some local production. And so this is leading to food insecurity. We're not talking about food safety anymore. We're talking more about food security. We need to have enough food for the population. So the farmers are planting more and more intensively, which is leading to soil degradation. With the high prices of the fuel, people are going more for deforestation, cutting wood in order to use it for heating. We're still in the winter season. And since we are not ready to import, or not able to import the forage for the animals, many shepherds are moving more and more for degrazing, and it's leading to overgrazing. All these factors, all combined together, are leading to more and more social conflicts. Next, please. So
just
basically,
2 more minutes, okay?
Yeah. So basically, it is not exactly the best time for FLR financing, because the priorities of the donors, the priorities of the country are shifting toward poverty alleviation, creating food security and the basic needs. However, we should be enough clever to turn this situation into an opportunity when we manage to combine altogether the environmental priorities and the natural resource management with the needs of the communities. I mean by that, we can find funds for restoration, but taking into account the needs of the community, like going for non-wood forest products, aromatic plants, these kind of substitutes that can be used by the population to get his food security. Next, please. So we have many stakeholders, all people that are living from the forest, the communities, the carob producers, beekeepers, etc. I will not go too much into those details. Next, please. So the sources, the classic source of funding that we had here are the individuals that were very keen to restore, to plant forest trees, CSOs, crowdfundings, the banks, unfortunately they are suffering now, and essentially the diaspora that are very attached to Lebanon and that are willing to help the country. And since they are a diaspora, it means that they can provide us with fresh money, what we call the fresh money, which is the dollars or euros coming from abroad. Next, please. The potential solution, and this is Christophe mentioned that with the FLR program, we are trying to create the National Forest Fund, which has a main objective of attracting the donors, whether they are at the national level or the international one, compile and manage those funds, and then coordinate with the implementers of the National Forest Planning, which is the Ministry of Agriculture and other partners. Unfortunately, this fund has suffered from bureaucracy, all the connections between the Ministry of Finance, the central bank, and other agencies, where there was kind of lack of trust in the public sector. And then the economic situation made things more critical. Next, please. So at the end, how to try to benefit from the current situation and to make the linkage between what we are doing now and the new publication. Well, in fact, you can see in this publication that there are new ideas to use in a much more efficient way our National Forest Fund and other FLR funding beyond the classic way of doing things through grants. So we need to go in the sense of setting some microloans options. We have some startups that are being created and they need those microloans, and then some are producing pine nuts, some are producing carob molasses, essential oils, very small businesses, but they can grow and can help the country go through this crisis. establishing new credit lines for FLR and associated guarantee mechanism, as Mathilde just explained it, and which was very interesting proposal to be taken into consideration. Then the value chain development, and I said that it would be very essential to go for the non-wood forest product in the forest management plans to be produced and implemented. And at the end, setting up the payment for ecosystemic schemes, which are very important. And to finish, what is very important is to combine all those options to get very good results. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Shadi. That was really fascinating and shows the complementarity between what is happening at national level and at local level. We have just a couple minutes that I'd like to use to ask our different speakers a follow-up question and ask them to see if you can respond in just 30 seconds or no. I know we started a little bit late, but I think this has been really, really rich, and just see if we can get your ideas for us into just a few succinct responses. Christoph, let me go first to you. These are hard times for everyone, and Shadi was just talking a little bit about that. Face-to-face meetings are problematic. What kind of innovative tools and methods are being used to address capacity development needs on finance for FLR?
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, we had to adapt the way we are working during the last months with the pandemic, and of course we developed new products, or we intensify our effort on several products. I would like to mention the fact that we decided to develop much more e-learning courses in 2020-2021. We are currently working on several courses to be released by end of 2021 on basic FLR knowledge, on FLR monitoring, and of course we launched this week three modules on FLR finance, and we will continue this effort to develop e-learning course on FLR. We also invested more time online in online knowledge sharing products with the organization of multiple thematic webinars on FLR finance, payment for ecosystem services schemes in the context of our community of practice on FLR finance. And finally, we are also developing a partnership with UNEP Finance Initiative and Bridge 4 Billion, and we are trying to pilot a mentorship platform named the Restoration Factory, which is a kind of online incubator aiming at supporting the preparation of bankable projects at landscape level for entrepreneurs that have in mind to develop a restoration project based on a particular value chain. This activity is done in the context of the Restoration Initiative thematic program funded by Jeff, but it is a very promising way to work and provide online support, mentorship support to local stakeholders. Hopefully it will work. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much. Let me ask you, Matilda, just one quick question. Is there one best financial instrument to mobilize at the landscape scale?
No, I think Sarah, as Shadi mentioned as well, we really need to coordinate all of them. And just to give an example, very often actually we keep saying private sector needs to be more engaged. We need to have very good private project in which we can invest, private sector project, and this is difficult to actually have investor going straight to give equity or even loans. And so you can mix it with some grants, as the French GEF is doing it. They are doing some technical assistance, technical assistance in form of grants to small SMEs, so that they can be at technically good and good enough for investment, where then the loan part and the equity investment can come. And I really think this is the future, how you can actually mix the different mechanism.
Fantastic. And it's very exciting. I want to work with you in the future on that, Matilda. Let me turn to you, Katiela. In just a few seconds, what is key from your perspective to have effective restoration window in communal and district budgets? What's the bottom line?
Thank you very much, Sarah. As you may know, all the countries where decentralization has been implemented, so the process is to transfer the responsibility of natural resource management and green investment to the local governments. So it is quite important to transfer the ownership of both planning and implementing of the FLR to this local level. And this must be the best avenue for the FLR to really fructify, to be sure that this kind of investment are really implemented at the local level in terms of ownership and improving and enhancing local economy.
Thank you very much. That's great. And just a last question, if you could answer in just a half a minute, Chadi, based on your experience with operationalizing the National Forest Fund in Lebanon, what is one or two key challenges to address to successfully establish a national pipeline, so financial resources for restoration can get to landscape and municipal level? Just half a minute.
Yeah, well, in fact, Sarah, I just mentioned it in one of the slides, is the trust. Because, you know, if you want to get funds from someone, they need to trust what you are doing. And so by working with FLR, we have shown a lot of good experience, a lot of good success stories. And this is building more and more trust between the public sector and the private sector, as well with the international organization. Showing success stories is one key issue to be taken into consideration for creating trust with the other partners. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. Well, this was really an inspiring session for me. I've been working on this, trying to crack this nut of landscape finance for a long time, and this is really a huge advance in the way that we're thinking about and acting on this process. I take away three messages. First of all, landscape restoration requires a wide range of different kinds of investment implemented by farmers and businesses and local governments, NGOs and communities. And these need to be coordinated to achieve transformation at the landscape scale and real benefits to local livelihood and nature. Secondly, we do require new forms of public, private, and civic finance to meet this challenge. While the total level of financing is indeed huge, we can't handle huge flows of funds going into huge mega projects in sectoral ways. There needs to be a mechanism for distributing these funds, making them available at the local level, and that's going to require some new kinds of financial instruments. Third, we're beginning to see these large volumes of funding going at the national and international level to address issues like public, private, and philanthropic, to address climate change, biodiversity, post-COVID recovery, healthy watersheds, a wide range of things. This case experience in this report demonstrates the potential and the viability to direct such funds not to these big projects, but to the numerous local investments for landscape restoration that are developed by local landscape partnerships. So good luck to all of you in your own efforts to mobilize forest and landscape restoration for healthy people and planet. Please stay on, if you would, for just 1 minute more to answer a couple of questions that we have. I leave you with the invitation also to complete the survey on UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, which is called Taking Stock of Global Capacity for Ecosystem Restoration. This will help us identify the needs to achieve global restoration. And the survey is available in English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, Arabic, and Russian. So I'll close here now. If you would stay on for just another minute and fill in a set of questions. It's just 3. What is your background profession? Why did you attend this meeting and what were you expecting? And do you want to learn more by becoming a member of the Forest Landscape Restoration Finance Community of Practice? We welcome you to do so. Have a wonderful International Day of Forests, celebrate together, and much good luck in all the good work that you all are doing on the ground. And big hand for all of our speakers who were fantastic. Thank you.